Welcome to our video blog here on the 5th of November for Bereans at the Gate. Our erstwhile leader is in high demand tonight as he'll be commenting on the election process. So you're left with myself, Jeff Heyman, Dr. Burt Wheeler, and Dr. Mark Clausen to talk about kind of the highlights of what's happening this week. And since Dr. Mark Caleb Smith has gone talking about the politics, what's going to happen tomorrow? What do you predict overall, Dr. Clausen, to happen in this election in terms of the House and the Senate?
If I'm going to go with what I see as the trend in the polling right now, as it stands right now, but not accounting for every variable, it's going to be the Democrats taking the House, but not the Senate, the House. If I'm going to go by my gut, sort of, but not completely, I'm going to say the Democrats need too many seats, 23 to be exact, to take the House. I think that's too many given the variables with the independents. Independents are really important in this election. You don't know how they're going to break until the last minute.
Sure. Usually independents are known to break against the party in power. And in fact, I saw that the Cook Political Report has just plussed up again the Democrats' number. So you're going against what the political consultants say.
I am, because
I feel pretty confident in that?
I never feel confident about these things, but you don't know what they're going to do generally.
Yes.
We thought we knew what they were going to do in 2016, and they didn't do what we thought they were going to do. And the other variable in this is that the polling tends to stop too soon, so you don't know how people are going to change their minds before the election itself.
One of the things I've been observing is that Mr. Trump is starting to go more towards the last minute campaigning for Senate seats. Does that suggest he thinks that the House is a lost cause and he needs to make sure and hold the line at the Senate?
It might, and generally I'd say it would. So I'm going to say yes, probably so. Can't be sure, but I think probably. There's some suspicion on the part of his advisors about that.
Okay. Dr. Wheeler, how about you? What do you think is going to happen tomorrow?
Well, I will go with the status quo. I do not think that anything different will happen. I think Republicans will probably lose the House, but that's just because what people have been telling me now for many, many months. So I don't really, have a good feel one way or the other. I don't think that Trump will have energized enough additional Republicans to change anything really differently, which I believe what he's trying to do right now. Jeff, how do you think about President Trump interjecting himself into the campaign the way that he's done so in the last couple of weeks?
In general, I mean, presidents being involved in the campaign is a normal thing. I don't think that there's anything particularly wrong with that. In fact, I'm quite confident he should be campaigning on behalf of Republicans. So I think that's beneficial for them. I mean, obviously, the particular things he's choosing to campaign on aren't necessarily what I would like him to be. We're going to have a foreign invasion. That's probably, I hate it when I'm having to agree with Mr. Obama that this is not the biggest threat to America of a foreign invasion. But nevertheless, I do think that that's natural for a president, and I think he's having a positive effect. I think all of us here and all of our viewers can probably should expect that Mr. Trump is probably a little bit more attuned to what's going to resonate with the base in those particular areas, and I think we'll see that positive. So, for instance, Tennessee, he's been spending a lot of time in your home state, and they're more open to a tougher border stance, and that's he believes he's helping Senator candidate Blackburn. So that
he likely is. Now, some will not want his help.
Oh, absolutely. Some have refused.
Right. So he's not going to go there.
The Taylor Swift effect might overswamp the Trump effect in this case because she came out for the Democratic candidate. But we'll wait and see. Again, I just don't know if President Trump's method, the personal method of turning it way about him as opposed to keeping the campaigning more local for the Senate or for the House candidates. We'll see how effective that is. If he can do the same thing that he did in 2016, then I think the Republicans will fare well. I'm just not certain if we'll be able to pull that off again.
One of the best analysts that I know is Henry Olson, and he's saying now that, he has said that it's a national referendum kind of for the president.
Well, Trump's made it that.
He's made it that, and so it may turn on how people like Trump, maybe not solely, but largely, how people think about Trump instead of their local situations, which, again, that throws me into a quandary about.
I think that's the story now. If that's accurate, I think it's what the pundits are saying has happened. That he's attempted to do that, and we're kind of going along with the flow. So,
Since the Bereans have not staked out a very ambitious counter to the political culture answer that the Democrats take the House and the Republicans preserve the Senate, let's assume that's the status quo
Okay.
and see if we can
Fair
think
enough.
about what it would look like. So what does it mean if the Republicans have held the Senate and are perhaps likely to have added a couple seats, but they've lost the House by a small majority,
Yeah.
or they're down just a few? What does that mean?
Legislatively, it means you're going to see less legislation. But on the other hand, the other side of that is you haven't seen a lot of legislation that's been significant anyway. So will that really stop things? I'm not sure it will. When it comes to regulatory revision, regulatory change, it won't stop the president from doing that. When it comes to appointments to the Supreme Court, it won't stop that. If that happens, we might see another one of those. So there's a lot that's not obstructed by this. Now, what may happen is they may want to hold hearings on various aspects they had not been able to do before regarding Russia or whatever else they think the president has been involved in.
So is it fair to say that you think that the business in the House of prospective legislation, if the Democrats take power, will grind to a halt from a Trump agenda?
Pretty much.
And is there anything that we can think that he was trying to work on that we will miss out on? If somehow, in other words, if somehow the Republicans hold the House, what would look different? Clearly, we're going to see Mr. Trump have a lot more pain because of the investigatory powers of the Democrats. But legislatively, what would a Republican majority be able to do?
Well, immigration, he wanted immigration. He wanted the Congress to pass immigration reform. That wouldn't happen anyway.
Yeah.
So that's not going to change. Tax reform, he was talking about more tax reform. That might not happen, but that might not have happened anyway. We can't be sure about that.
I think it's for sure it won't happen.
Yeah, I think
If
it's sure it
that's
won't
the
happen
case,
anyway.
I don't think it would have happened on anything. It's hard for me to see exactly what would be the difference in the legislative agenda.
Yeah.
The tone and direction of the country, however, that's going to be different as if the Democrats try to impeach the president. Do you think if they take power, they would be foolish enough to try to impeach him?
They would not be foolish enough. Only a few individuals on the extreme fringe would be foolish enough to suggest it even.
Do you think their base will tolerate that?
Will tolerate not doing it?
Not impeaching.
Oh yeah, I think they'd have to. They'd have to. I mean, only a few fringe radicals, complete radicals, I think, would support going forward with impeachment. I mean, they might talk about it, but they're not really going to go for it.
Dr. Wheeler, how about you? What do you see if the status quo, what we project, holds? What do you think will be different, if anything?
well, I think tax cut 2.0 might happen. Otherwise, it may not.
May not.
May not, but that would be
could.
the only thing that I could see would possibly be demonstrably different. I think there would be more talk about impeachment with the Democrats in charge of the House. Now, how far it would go, I don't know. It depends on what, if anything, would come up in an investigation, which we don't anticipate that it would. So I can see that being a little bit more disruptive, but largely I think things will just kind of putter along the way they've been going.
We've been puttering.
Puttering.
Well, now, of course, if the House did hypothetically impeach the president, the Senate's going to have to try that. It's not going to happen.
Right, I think it's what would
Yeah.
prohibit the House from making what would just simply be a political move.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Which would be a poor political move, I believe.
Be a very poor political
In
move.
fact, my suspicions are that if the Democrats take the House, that will ultimately help Mr. Trump in his reelection campaign.
Interesting.
So I'm not optimistic about that for multiple reasons. I've been one advocating that there should be a Republican challenger to face Mr. Trump from a
next
more
election.
moral perspective after this election.
Yeah.
And if the Democrats take the House and they're aggressively after Mr. Trump, that's going to, I believe, result in more Republicans. You know, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, that kind of logic, and it will be very difficult unless they can actually find something in there to take him down, which might leave an opening for somebody on the right. But even then, it would be, I think that would be very difficult. So
Yeah, otherwise I think it looks like just sheer pettiness on their part.
if the Republicans somehow hold the House, I think I'm hopeful and think there would be some Republican that would challenge on the right, in however unlikely that scenario would look.
Yeah.
So.
By the way,
I'm not hopeful that's going to happen anyway. I don't. If Trump comes back, decides to run, probably starts campaigning tomorrow morning. He actually already has
he
been.
has. He's
in
already
a
has
real
been.
sense.
Yeah.
So I just don't think there'll be a Republican that would mount a serious challenge at this time.
at this time,
Well, before 2020, I don't think it would happen. I think it'd be very difficult. It'd just be a difficult proposition. I understand why some of us would want it. That
Yeah.
I can understand. But if you're more just a straight politician and all you care about, well, too strong. Mostly what you care about is winning. All right, so
True.
you want to win. I just don't think you want to disrupt the party in that way at this time.
maybe, may well be.
It could
It's a
be.
good point.
My sense that would be, though, that somebody wants to position themselves as the post-Trump Republican. That's what I'm expecting.
So you may
Somebody-
expect to lose this time
Oh, yeah,
around.
definitely.
Yeah.
They're not expecting to win,
Yeah.
but somebody has to put themselves as the alternative to Trump. And so
Yeah.
and there will be some select people that will want to have a different vision for the party. You know, I'm still calling
Yeah.
Senator Sass, step up.
Yeah, I mean-
but we'll see. I mean, somebody would normally be after that.
A
I mean,
truly respectable candidate.
Even
Yeah.
if Buchanan challenging on the right from George Bush, and
Yeah.
those kinds of things. There's always people that want to posture themselves and change the direction, I believe, of the party.
Yeah.
We'll see. Unless it's very, very popular. And Mr. Trump is pretty popular with the base.
He's pretty popular.
So in the Senate, if the Republicans hold, you've talked a little bit about what that means. Expand on whether you think that's a good result.
The Republicans holding?
Yes.
Well, if they didn't hold, if they lost both houses, they'd have you'd have a real problem there because any legislation would be oriented toward Democratic legislation or liberal legislation. But of course, Trump could veto it, and since it's so close, there's no real possibility of overriding the veto. So that sort of switches positions. Essentially, the Congress becomes the president becomes the one who's effectively making legislation by vetoing what he doesn't like. So he's keeping the status quo as much as he can. And I hope he would do that from his position on the conservative side or quasi-conservative side sometimes. And that's what he should be doing in that case. But it does shift his position. He can't worry about legislation now. It's not going to be his legislation.
Okay, well, just in closing, let's say, do either of you have any outside predictions? What's going to be the likely surprise if there's any surprise to be held?
Hey, what about the Ohio race, the governor's race? Cordray versus DeWine.
DeWine.
You know, that's an interesting
That's a
race.
close one.
It's a close one, and I'm kind of surprised it's been that close.
So do you think Mr. DeWine will win?
Boy, would I go on a limb and predict? Okay, I'll predict. I think he will. He'll pull it out in the end. He will. But
I
Cordray,
think
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I agree. I think Mike DeWine will win.
Close.
District 12 around Columbus is interesting. We'll see the Republican just snuck through by the barest of percentages in the special election. So we'll see this time if the Republican can hold what has demonstrably been a Republican stronghold.
Yeah.
In this election.
Sure.
I think that could be very, very, very interesting if the Democrats win that seat.
Yeah. Think of Montana. It's an interesting state for a race. And a lot of people are not quite sure what to make of Montana. I think Montana's problem is it's going purple. It has been a red state, but more and more people from California and Oregon are moving there and shifting its ideological orientation.
Also, I think the governor races in Florida and Georgia are of interest.
Yeah, they are.
Perhaps I'm thinking of the Atlanta mayor. Perhaps that's what I'm thinking.
The
of.
largest city.
But
yeah.
right. Yeah.
We'll see what happens. I'm interested to see some of these.
Well, we will see probably not till Wednesday about the actual results on this. And nevertheless, we will be back with you next week. If you have any comments, as usual, you can put them in our dialogue on the Bereans at the Gate, and we would love to hear your questions, comments, or firebombs. And we will hopefully have Mark Caleb Smith back to be our fearless leader next week. Thank you very much.